Hello everyone, this is Deltify Education, and this video will tell you all about SAT grammar rules. This video will also include multiple practice questions, and I will walk you through every single one of them. This video is also fast-paced, so lock in. To understand SAT grammar, you first need to understand clauses. Clauses are groups of words containing both a subject and a verb. Look at this example. You are currently watching a video. You is the subject, and watching is the verb. Now, there's two types of clauses, independent and dependent. Independent clauses are basically complete thoughts. I am studying SAT grammar. This is a complete thought. It stands alone as a complete sentence. Dependent clauses are incomplete thoughts. They cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. Look at this example. Because I want to do good on the SAT. Because you want to do good on the SAT what? This is not a complete thought. So what makes a complete sentence? You need at least one dependent clause. So look at this first example. This is a dependent clause, and this is an independent clause. These are mixed together, and they have at least one independent clause. This is a complete sentence. Look at this one as well. There's two independent clauses in there, so this is also a complete sentence. For this guide to be effective, please remember these colors. Please remember that the dependent clause will be represented by light blue, and complete sentences will be represented by purple. The first SAT grammar we're going to talk about is about periods and semicolons. A period ends a complete sentence. A semicolon connects two complete sentences while showing that the ideas are related, and the key rule is that periods and semicolons go between two complete sentences. So look at these correct examples. Some people learn SAT grammar by watching review videos. That's a complete sentence. Others learn through grammar books. That's also a complete sentence. So it is appropriate that you use a period or a semicolon to connect these two clauses. Now, this is an incorrect example. Studying SAT grammar is efficient and rewarding. Well, that's a complete sentence. Because the rules are limited and repeat often. That's a dependent clause. So a semicolon here would not be appropriate. So remember this SAT tip as well. Semicolons and period are basically interchangeable on the SAT, and this is only true when both sides are complete sentences, like this example right here. So next up, we're going to talk about commas. Basically, commas create a small separation within a sentence, and that signals a verbal pause. It has various uses, and we're going to talk about them later. A comma cannot separate two complete sentences. There must be at least one dependent clause around the comma. That's the core rule. Please remember this. And look at these correct and incorrect examples. The correct example is correct because this part is a dependent clause, comma, and then this part is a complete sentence. So this also sounds right because it's absolutely correct. Because your SAT testing day is rapidly approaching, you decide to review all of SAT grammar. Now, this is incorrect. You should subscribe to Deltify Education, comma, he helped you understand SAT grammar. Well, these are two complete sentences, so this violates the rule and you should not use a comma here. Commas can also introduce phrases and transitions. The core rule is that the introductory phrase and the transition goes before the main sentence. Look at this basic structure right here. It goes introductory phrase, main sentence, and transition word, main sentence. And look at these examples. Transition word, introductory phrase, main sentence, main sentence. Notice in both of these examples, the comma is surrounded by at least one dependent clause or transitional words or phrase, and that follows the core rule we talked about earlier. Commas can also connect two complete sentences only if you use a fanboy structure. The structure is complete sentence, comma, fanboys, complete sentence. So you're going to add on a comma fanboys after the first complete sentence. So look at this correct example. You help me ace the SAT grammar rules, comma, so you are the best. An incorrect example would be, Deltify Education helped me learn SAT grammar rules, but I still chose not to subscribe because I'm a mean person. There's no comma here, so this is incorrect. Beware of this trap on the SAT, it happens a lot. Another thing is with commas and descriptors. If you have two descriptors where order does not matter, place a comma between the descriptors. Look at these correct examples. This is a cool educational SAT grammar review video. This is an educational cool SAT grammar review video. They both work. An SAT tip is to always consider whether the clauses around the comma are dependent or independent. This is so that you can use the rule and decide whether you're going to use a comma or not. Also, do not pick a comma as the right answer choice just because you heard a pause within that sentence. It's great to sound things out in that SAT, but sometimes it can mislead you. So always check whether the clauses around the comma are dependent or independent. Let's look into a few practice questions to reinforce what we just learned. You can pause the video to give this question your own try. After that, I'll explain it. In her analysis of Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth, scholar Candace Wade observes that the novel depicts the upper classes of New York society as consumed by the appetite of soulless blank, an apt assessment given that The House of Mirth is set during the Gilded Age, a period marked by rapid industrialization, economic greed, and widening wealth disparities. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? Based on the answer choices, I can see that this question is testing us on what goes after the word materialism. Some of the answer choices have punctuation and some don't. So let's take a look at what goes before and after the blank. What I immediately notice is that what goes after the blank, this latter half, is a dependent clause. And I also notice that this first half is a complete sentence. This perfectly fits the commas rule. So it should be C, materialism, comma, because a commas rule is that there must be one dependent clause along with a complete sentence for that sentence to exist. And indeed, the correct answer is C. Let's look at another practice question. The Alvarez theory, developed in 1980 by physicist Louis Walter Alvarez and his geologist son Walter Alvarez, maintained that the secondary effects of an asteroid impact caused many dinosaurs and other animals to die. Blank. It left unexplored the question of whether related volcanic activity might have also contributed to mass extinctions. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? So once again, let's take a look at what goes before and after the blank. This first half is a complete sentence. The second half is also a complete sentence. So because of this, a comma is not sufficient. C, with nothing there, would also be insufficient because it will create a run-on sentence. So it has to be B, because the fanboys connects two complete sentences together. And A just is missing a comma. And the correct answer is indeed B. Let's take a look at lists. List items can be separated by commas or semicolons. We use semicolons when a list item contains a comma. So look at this correct example. This video's grammar advice will reach people from various cities like San Francisco, California, Austin, Texas, and Boston, Massachusetts. Each list item has a comma. Now, it will be incorrect to write San Francisco, California, Austin, Texas, and Boston, Massachusetts, because notice how I'm saying it. When I say it, there's a pause between it. There's not supposed to be a pause because that's not a separate list item. This is a complete list item, so you cannot use a comma to separate this. We use commas when a list item does not contain a comma. So look at this correct example. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like the video, smash that subscribe button, and share this video with your friends who are also studying for the SAT. To see how simple list questions really are, let's take a look at this hard practice question from a College Board question bank. Right off the bat, we can see that this is a list question because of this part. These include. Now let's look at each individual list item. Overseeing the Library of Congress's collections, which boasts more than 162 million blank. The U.S. Copyright Office, which registers copyright claims and advises Congress on copyright law. And appointing the U.S. Poet Laureate. We can see that in this first list item, there's a comma. And this second list item, there's also a comma. So what should we use? We should definitely just use a semicolon, because that's the rule. Also, if you look over here, there's a semicolon. So that's just another hint, hinting towards that the answer is a semicolon. And indeed, the correct answer is C. Now let's talk about colons and dashes. Colons introduce a point that it explains, defines, or lists something later in the sentence. And a complete sentence must go before the colon for the sentence to be grammatically correct. Look at this correct example. The student had a shocking realization while reviewing test material with his friends. Colon. He should watch review videos made by Delta Phi Education to achieve high scores on the SAT and the AP exams. This part before the colon is a complete sentence, so this is correct. Now let's look at an incorrect example. Because of this realization, the student decided to visit Delta Phi Education's YouTube page. Now, there's a dependent clause that goes before the colon, so this is incorrect. There's a common SAT trap as well. If you see a word or phrase that introduces examples, do not place a colon after that word or phrase. So let's look at this incorrect example. The SAT grammar question tests multiple standard English conventions, including colon, punctuation, subject-verb agreement, and modifiers. This is a word that introduces the list. So let's not use a colon after that word. Dashes set off non-essential information. This will be explained shortly. And they can also introduce an example. When introducing an explanation or example of a dash is to be placed after a complete sentence. So let's look at this correct example. The student was confident while taking the SAT. Delta Phi Education had taught him well. This is the example. And this is also the complete sentence. So this is correct. Look at this incorrect example. Because he was taught so well, dash, the student scored 1570 on his SAT. This is a dependent clause. So this is not correct. Also, when introducing explanations or examples with the dash can be replaced with a colon. Do not do this with non-essential information. Colons cannot introduce non-essential information. So let's look at these correct examples. SAT scores are essential for college admissions. Dash, you rarely see anybody enter Ivy League schools with a low SAT score. This is also a correct example. SAT scores vary dramatically among students. Colon, students at my school may have scores as low as 560, while others may have scores as high as 1770. And these are both correct because this is a complete sentence and this is a complete sentence and may go before the punctuation. I forgot to mention this earlier, but dashes can also introduce lists. Let's take a look at this practice question. In her book, The Woman Warrior, Memoirs of a Girlhood Among Ghosts, author Maxine Hong Kingston examines themes blank, childhood, womanhood, and Chinese American identity by intertwining autobiography and mythology. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? We can see that this is a list. Since colons and dashes can introduce lists and they're in the same place here, we can eliminate both because they cannot be both correct answers. A comma cannot introduce a list. So this is wrong. So it has to be B. And indeed, the correct answer is B. Here we're going to talk about non-essential information. Non-essential information is a clause or phrase that introduces information that's not required for the sentence to make sense. It only introduces extra information. Non-essential information can be separated from a main sentence by using dashes, commas, and parentheses. And for the love of God, please use the same punctuation mark at the beginning and the end of a non-essential clause. Let's look at this correct example. This SAT grammar video, made in 2026, is awesome. Well, this is the non-essential clause. Made in 2026 is non-essential information because it's not required for the sentence to make sense. If we remove it without this SAT grammar review video is awesome. It still makes sense, right? Look at these incorrect examples. Leading educator, Delta Phi Education, played a major role in your SAT grammar education. Now, this is Delta Phi Education is not a non-essential information. Why is this? What happens if we remove this? Leading educator played a major role in your SAT grammar education. Well, who's that leading educator? We don't know, so the sentence doesn't make sense anymore. Look at this other incorrect example. Delta Phi Education, who wants to share his knowledge about AP, SAT, and college admission tips to the world, put a lot of work into this video. Now, this middle part is non-essential information, because if you remove it, it still makes sense. Delta Phi Education put a lot of work into this video. It still makes sense. But what is wrong about this is that the punctuation ends with different things. There's a comma, and then there's a parentheses. So that's wrong. College Board loves to mix different punctuation marks at the beginning and end of the non-essential information, so be aware of this. Let's take a look at this practice question to learn more about non-essential information. In a 2023 study, researchers documented a fascinating behavior of aquatic plant Elodea densa. When exposed to low levels of light, the plants blank. The cellular organs that generate energy from light dash reshuffle to form a tightly packed, glass-like surface ideal for collecting more light. Which choice completes the text that conforms to the conventions of standard English? Now, when we look at the second sentence, when exposed to low levels of light, the plants blank, and then it's chloroplasts. We're testing on which punctuation goes after this. The cellular organs that generate energy from light. Well, this is explaining what chloroplasts are. So this, right here, is non-essential information. So what can we use to separate non-essential information? Well, we can't use A, nothing. We can't use B, with a semicolon, so it has to be a comma or a dash. Now, you see a dash is here. We cannot mix and match punctuation marks for non-essential information. So, since it ends with a dash, it has to start with a dash. So, it has to be D. And indeed, the correct answer is D. Now we're going to talk about possession. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to explain it very fast, so please pay attention. So, singular possession is when a single person or thing has something. The formula is single noun plus apostrophe s plus own thing. So, example, the educator's video. Educator is a single noun, apostrophe s, and then video. Regular plural possession. This is when a plural noun has something. So, plural noun plus apostrophe plus own thing is a formula. The dog's food. Dogs is already plural, apostrophe, food. The food belongs to a dog. Now, plural possession can be irregular. In these cases, the formula is regular plural noun plus apostrophe s plus own thing. Woman is the plural of woman. So, it is appropriate here to use the woman's dressing room. Still has apostrophe s because that's a formula. There's also possessive pronouns. These include his, hers, our, yours, theirs, its, etc. The formula is possessive pronoun plus own thing. His cat, their homework. The cat's belonging to him. The homework is belonging to them. Now, there's joint versus separate possession. Joint possession occurs when both objects share the same thing, and only the second object gets the apostrophe. For example, the cat and dog's ball. Now, the cat and dog has possession to the ball, so both objects share the same thing. Separate possession occurs when each object has their own thing, and both objects get apostrophes. For example, Colin's and Daniel's homework. So there's Colin's homework, and then there's also Daniel's homework. Hopefully that makes sense. There's also special possession words. Many people get confused on this. It's versus its. This first its is a possessive word. It's bowl. The bowl belonged to it. It apostrophe s means it is. For example, it's raining. Literally the same thing as it is raining. There's also whose versus whose. Whose is the possessive word. The authors whose book won the prize. The book belongs to the author. Whose means who is or who has. So who's responsible? Same thing as who is responsible. Now there's their versus their versus their. Their is a possessive word. Their basket. The basket belongs to them. Their indicates position or existence. There exists. The ball is over there. Now that's position. There means they are. So right here, they're playing ball. Same thing as they are playing ball. Now let's take a look at verb tenses. You need to keep verb tense consistent in a sentence unless the time clearly changes. So look at this correct example. Sam is studying for the SAT by watching this video. The tense stays the same because there's no change in time. Look at this incorrect example. In the future, I will make more videos and help more students. Well, this stays in the future and this is past tense. These are different tenses, so this is incorrect. Look at this correct example. He slept poorly yesterday night, so he will be tired for the SAT later today. Okay, there's a time change. Yesterday night and later today. So a tense change would be appropriate. Look at this incorrect example. Last year, he achieved a score of 1040 on his SAT. And for his next SAT, he achieved a 1330. Time clearly changed here, last year, and it says for his next SAT, but the tense stayed the same. So this is incorrect. Now we're going to talk about dangling modifiers. A dangling modifier occurs when a descriptive phrase incorrectly describes what it's supposed to. The noun right after the modifier should be the thing that the modifier describes. So let's look at this example to understand more. Look at this incorrect example. Studying for hours a day to prepare, testing strategies were understood by the student. Why is this incorrect? Well, testing strategies is the noun, and this is implying that testing strategies were studying for hours a day to prepare. Okay, well, that doesn't make sense. Testing strategies can't do that. The correct one is the student. So the student's actually studying for hours. Now let's look at this correct example. This fixes the incorrect example. Studying for hours a day to prepare, the student understood all the testing strategies. Now this makes sense because it's the student who is studying for hours a day to prepare. That makes sense. Let's take a look at this practice question to understand more about dangling modifiers. On April 5th, 1977, Kitty Cohn and 150 other disability rights activists entered San Francisco Federal Building after pleading for years to no effect for the passage of key anti-discrimination legislation, blank, until their demands were addressed. Finally, on April 28th, the legislation was signed. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? We know this is a dangling modifier question because all of these choices, they have roughly the same content in them. However, the beginning noun is changed. Now, what is describing the noun in the sentence? After pleading for years to no effect for a passage of key anti-discrimination legislation. That's what's modifying the noun. Now, what could be pleading for anti-discrimination legislation? Well, pressure on lawmakers cannot. A sit-in protest cannot. And lawmakers, they're not going to plead for years because it literally says this. Disability rights activists were protesting and pleading. So, it must be D. Now we're going to talk about passive voice. You don't want to use passive voice in any of your SAT. Now, this may look confusing, and it was also confusing when I first took the SAT because it looked grammatically correct. Use an active voice. Don't use a passive voice. A passive voice emphasizes what receives the action, while an active voice emphasizes who did the action. This is passive voice. The SAT was taken by the students on Saturday morning. This is active voice. The students took the SAT on Saturday morning. Now we're going to talk about illogical comparisons. Illogical comparisons occur when a sentence compares two things that don't make sense to be compared together. Always compare thing to thing, person to person, quality to quality, and action to action. Look at this incorrect example. Maya's SAT score is higher than Liam. Well, an SAT score can't be higher than Liam. That doesn't make any sense. You're comparing a score to a person. The correct example that fixes this is Maya's SAT score is higher than Liam's SAT score. Now you're comparing SAT score to SAT score, and that makes sense. Thank you guys for watching this video. It would be appreciated if you could like and subscribe because I spent a lot of time on this video. Good luck on your next SAT, and if you need additional practice and want the slideshow, it is posted in the description. Good luck.